Members, please take your seats. Our Sergeant-at-Arms will secure the doors for the moment. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
All right, Senators, we will notice that we are missing several of our colleagues. If we could have the Sergeant-at-Arms please open the doors. We knew the life was missing from the chamber, obviously, and has been restored. We were not whole even remotely as we started today. I believe. Well, I guess. How about we do this? Why don't we do the invocation, and then I know that the senator from the 8th district has a proclamation for us today, a resolution. Let's start with the prayer, and then we will call ourselves to order now that we have our full body restored with our incredible, diverse body here. Today, we are going to have the invocation from the Pastor Jeffrey Long, a good friend of here in the Senate, a former one of our staff colleagues of the Communion Way of the Cross Church in Prince Frederick, Maryland, guest of the distinguished senator from District 27. Members, please rise for the invocation.
Mr. President and members of the Senate, it's a pleasure to greet a chamber in which I love. Shall we pray? Gracious God, you alone have been our dwelling place. From everlasting to everlasting, you are God. We thank you for your protection and your provision, for your peace, and for these civil servants which have heeded the call to public service, even in these times of uncertainty, of peril, and unrest. Today, God, we pray that the wisdom of King Solomon would garrison and overshadow the hearts and the minds of these your servants as they contemplate the matters to advance this state and its residents forward. Today, as they contemplate the serious topics of social and criminal justice reform, help them to understand that but by your grace, they would too be in the same predicament. Today, God, we thank you that you have been a constant driving force. From everlasting to everlasting, you have been the same. We thank you because in the words of the old Negro spiritual, time is filled with swift transition. Naught of earth unmoved can stand. Build your hopes on things eternal. Hold to God's unchanging hand. Lord, help these leaders, help this chamber to hold on to your hand in all things, despite the vicissitudes of life, that you will not change. We thank you for all these things said and done, that they will be to your glory and for the upbuilding of your kingdom. We pray all these things in the mighty, matchless, ubiquitous, magnanimous name of our Lord. And all God's people said amen.
The chair recognizes the senator from District 27.
Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues. I think most of the members, if not all the members, may have recognized that young pastor. I've had the pleasure over the last 2.5 years or so. He worked as a member of my office staff. He is his church is in 27B sub-district with us. But he also served with the President Emeritus when he was the Senate President. And also for permission to use the senator's name.
Senator may proceed.
Senator Benson as well for a short period of time. But I thank you for allowing him to speak this morning, Mr. President, and I'd ask that his prayer be journalized. Thank you.
All right, without objection, we will most certainly journalize the invocation from this morning. Senators, you'll notice on our board, we are not fully in, and I think this is symbolic of the importance of the diversity of our chamber. We would respectfully ask all the men to clear your votes, please, to clear your votes. And Senator from District 8, if you'd like to, we'll do our resolution at this point, and go ahead and let us know what did we experience this morning.
May I read what I have here?
Absolutely, Senator may proceed.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, on August 18th, 1920, the United States ratified the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which guaranteed women the right to vote after decades-long battle known as the women's suffrage movement. Let's hear it, ladies. Wow, I'm so glad you're so excited. Last year, we would have had a huge celebration to commemorate the 100th anniversary of this ratification, but due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, we were unable to do so. It's important to recognize the significance that the state of Maryland had in the women's suffrage movement. In 2013, the General Assembly passed legislation that created the Commission on the Commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution. This commission was tasked with planning the celebration for the 100th anniversary, but they did not wait until 2020 to begin their work. Over the past 7 years, the commission has continuously worked to recognize key moments in the women's suffrage movement. Some of their work has included the installation of roadway markers in the areas of the state that had significance in the movement, one of which is in the 8th District, one I know is in Prince George's County, and one is in Western Maryland that I know of here. While I hope that we would be able to have all of the commissioners here in Annapolis today, the conditions of our legislative session has made that not possible. However, it's important to take the time to recognize their hard work in the past few years. And let me just say, the very first chair was our own Senator Lulla, and then it became, we will talk about that in a minute, but we had Diana Bailey from Maryland's Women's Heritage Center, Katie Caljean from the Maryland Historic Society, Elizabeth Hughes from the Maryland Historic Trust, Beatrice Lucas from Maryland State Conference of the NAACP, Cynthia Miller from the Department of Commerce, Roberta Sharper from the League of Women Voters, Emily Oline Squires from the Maryland State Archives, Evan Stewart, Emma Bradley Thomas from the Maryland Commission for Women. Can we have a little cheer one for them, please? And let me just say, they worked tirelessly. Finally, we have the chair of the commission, as in the last many years, Major General Linda Singh, who is joining us via Zoom today. Major General Singh was the first woman to lead Maryland's National Guard. She did a terrific job in leading the commission's work. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give Major General Linda Singh a huge round of applause. We can do it again. Ladies and gentlemen, women have come so far in the past 100 years. Hard work and determination has paid off, but let me declare this today. The work is not done. We still have glass ceilings to break, and we're not going to just poke a hole in them and hope for the best. We are going to shatter the darn things. And may the clerk please read the resolution.
Madam Senator, if we wouldn't mind, would the Senator mind if we had General Singh maybe give us a few remarks, if she wouldn't mind? I don't mean to catch her off guard.
If she wouldn't mind, I would love to hear her because she had worked so hard to make this happen.
Absolutely. General Singh, if you are able to come off of mute, we will see if we can make this
Good
technology.
morning, everyone. I want to say first, thank you so much, and thank you to the Senator for recognizing the team. There were a couple of other folks that, excuse me, that were very critical to us being able to make this happen, and they just continued to pitch in wherever they could, even though they weren't commission members. And that was Catherine Kelly, who assisted me even once I left as the Adjutant General. She continued to help us with the commission. And then another friend of the commission, which is Christine Valerian, and then Brigadier General Janine Burkhead, as well as many of the women from the Maryland National Guard, tried to really, support the commission wherever they could. And I want to say thank you to you all, because we could not have been able to make this possible without having this, really the commission being put into place and then us being able to move forward. And, we do have a lot of work to do. As you can imagine, unfortunately, the pandemic has really taken a toll, and it's kind of set us back a little bit. It's set really not only our whole, everyone back, but it's really set women back in their ability to move forward, because 9 times out of 10, they're the ones that are having to take care of the families at home. And so we still have a lot of work to do. And Senator Claus-Meyer and team there, I know that you all are up for the charge. And I want to say thank you and God bless you to all of you.
We thank you so much, General Singh, for your service to the state, of course, to the National Guard as well, for your incredible work on the Women's Commission. And it's sort of a moment of pause, reflection, and then rejuvenation and restoration. So we are so deeply appreciative of you and for all of our colleagues for the work that you do and the focus that you bring. You make all of us more effective. Yes, Chair,
Okay. Mr. President, I think I missed a line or two, and I appreciate General Singh for mentioning those people as well. But I would just like to say, if I may say the name of our senator.
Senator, may proceed.
Cheryl
Kagan?
Cheryl Kagan, and I'm thinking about the two that were in the House. It was written down, and somehow or other it got deleted. But I do know Delegate Miller was in it too. But can I say that tomorrow? I don't have it in my mind right now.
Absolutely.
Senator Kagan was a great asset to the group. Whenever we had phone calls or whatever to make and conference calls, she was there. And it was before Zoom came along, so we didn't even get to see each other. But I also would like to congratulate all of the women that work here in our Senate. So thank you all very much for everything that you do. So let's hear it. Stand up and be counted. So thank you very much for letting us do this today, because it was very disappointing not having it.
Absolutely. No, that certainly was a huge disappointment last year, and certainly we will hopefully find many, many, many more opportunities moving forward. Before we do the resolution, let's make sure that we can ask our male counterparts to join the women in now recognizing their presence in the chamber. If everyone could record their presence in the chamber, including myself, that would help. All right, the clerk will take the call. With 47 senators in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is now in session. And let's begin the right way. If we could ask the clerk to read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to the Commission on the commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution. In recognition of your efforts to recognize the women's suffrage movement, thank you for your service and dedication to the state of Maryland. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on this 16th day of March 2021.
The clerk will take the call. Call the roll. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 46 unanimous support, the Senate of Maryland hereby congratulates and celebrates the commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution in recognition to the women's suffrage movement and the incredible work and participation of all of our colleagues over these last 100 years to create a better and more just democracy. So thank you all very, very much, and thank you, General Singh, for all of your continued efforts. All right. Off we go into the work of the body. Why we are all...
Mr.
Oh, yes, Senator
President, just
Senator
one
from
other
District 8.
thing, and I'll say this at the end too, that I need the sashes back because the House is doing something on Thursday. So
We are glad to help the House out whenever they need it. All right. Okay, so today, any announcements? Any other announcements today before we jump into the work of the body today? Nope, no announcements. Just very briefly, we had a long, extensive executive nomination session tomorrow, and just want to have just a quick conversation with the body. You know, executive nominations is one of these odd responsibilities that the Senate has. Incredibly important, incredibly impactful constitutional duty. Under the rules, executive nominations traditionally has been a function done in executive session. And the reason is that as you're sort of debating the fitness of character or ethics or whatever it may be of a potential nominee to serve in any state capacity, that has lasting implications. That is especially the case in times like today where we know video clips can be clipped for a little 15-second snippet and sort of potentially misused. And I say all of this because things got a little bit hostile, not hostile, but a bit intense last night. And just want to give everyone a reminder that, you know, as we are talking, particularly when it comes to executive nominations, but it comes to any specific, it's why we refrain from talking about individual companies or individual neighborhoods or when we're on the Senate floor. You know, our words matter, and what we say has implications. And so, you know, there are certainly places where we're going to disagree, particularly on somebody's perspective or policy choices, what they personally believe. And we just have to be very mindful, very, very, very mindful moving forward of balancing our disagreement on policy with things that could be, you know, potentially used in posterity over time. So I just want to mention that as we have some important executive nominations moving forward, and of course we're going to have some hot topics this week as we get into crossover. So just a reminder that, you know, just think about the words that are being spoken on this floor. It's not just in this chamber. They have reverberations outside in society. And so please, I'd really make sure that everyone is thinking cautiously and carefully about that as we fiercely advocate for our positions. All right, if there are no other announcements this morning, let's go ahead and waive the reading of the journal from the prior legislative day. We have a couple more House bills. The House has been doing some work. This is calendar number 13. The clerk will read the bills.
House Bill 5, Delegate Krebs, Cemeteries, Perpetual Care Distribution from Perpetual Care Trust Fund.
Majority Leader moves so be considered the reading of the bills. We have a few additional executive nominations appointments. The clerk will read the message from the governor.
Dear President Ferguson, in accordance with Article 2, Chapter 13 of the Constitution of Maryland, I am pleased to submit appointment nominations for confirmation by the Maryland State Senate. These individuals bring exceptional knowledge and ability to the offices which they have been nominated. I am confident they will provide the strength of experience and leadership to instill confidence among our citizens and ensure we succeed in our goal for Marylanders. I look forward to your favorable approval of these nominees. Thank you for your assistance and support. Sincerely, Lawrence J. Hogan, Jr., Governor.
Message having been read without objection will be journalized. The nominees will be referred to the Committee on Executive Nominations. While we have everyone here, if there are no objections, let's go ahead and get through the third reading calendar. If we have everyone, actually, let's do a quorum call before third reading calendar.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 47 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. This is calendar number 27. The clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 61, Senator Lamb, Public Buildings Changing Facilities Requirements.
Senate Bill 61 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 61, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 139, Senator Carrozza, Interstate Occupational Therapy Licensure Compact.
Senate Bill 139 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 139, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 365, Senator McCray, Neighborhood Business Development Program, Food Desert Projects, Business Retention.
Senate Bill 365 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 365, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 371, Senator Peters, Specialized Education, Individual Education Programs, Educational Evaluations.
Senate Bill 371 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 371, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 439, Senator Reedy, Public Institutions of Higher Education, Student Athletes, Jordan McNair Safe and Fair Play Act.
Senate Bill 439 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 439, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 455, Senator Signor, Employment Discrimination, Time for Filing Complaints.
Senate Bill 455 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 455, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 500, Senator Lamb, Psychology Interjurisdictional Compact.
Senate Bill 500 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote, changed their vote, explained their vote? If not, clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 500, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 509, Senator Peters, National Capital Strategic Economic Development Program Eligibility.
Senate Bill 509 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 509, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 525, Senator McCray, Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services and State Board of Elections, Centralized Booking Facility, Ballot Drop Box.
Senate Bill 525 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 36 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 525, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 566, Senator Eldridge, Anne Arundel County Transfer Tax Housing Trust Special Revenue Fund.
Senate Bill 566 is on third reader for final passage. Chair recognizes the minority leader.
Thank you. If the floor leader would yield, please.
Will the floor leader yield? It appears so. Senator may proceed.
Thank you. I had a few constituents come back to me after our hearing, so I just had a couple quick questions, if we could just relay this for the body. What was the rationale for picking $1 million in this bill?
I don't know if I could speak to the rationale. This is by request of the county executive. I believe his rationale was to make this a progressive property tax and separating out the impact between lower and higher property rates.
Okay. So I started looking around and I saw just real quickly, I saw a place in Annapolis where they had a $1.5 million commercial property for sale, and I think it was like 1,800 square foot, which is not a huge property for a business. And I looked in my district, and there was a failed car wash, and that was for 1.5, I think. So I guess, was there any consideration, because this affects commercial properties as well, who have, through teleworking and quarantine and all that, really been devastated potentially? Was there any consideration about the impact on those businesses that actually have to sell because their business went under? I know the county executive stated that he wanted to raise these taxes as soon as he could, but was there any consideration given to them?
Again, Senator, I can't speak for the county executive's rationale. I can speak to what was presented to us in delegation, presented to the committee, but that did not come up in either of those circumstances. Okay,
and just last question. I basically heard the overall theme was we want to tax the rich and help the poor, because I know where this money goes to, and I understand that. But if this is just a tax on the transfer sale, that doesn't necessarily mean somebody's rich. I mean, they could actually lose money, especially during COVID. And so I'm not sure that the way this is drafted actually hit the target of, taxing the rich, because I know some people in our district have actually gone under because of COVID, and this is just going to add more taxes on them when they try to get out from the investment that they put on. Is that your understanding of the bill as well?
It's my understanding of the bill trying to make a distinction between, we draw distinctions in this chamber all the time, between over $1 million and under $1 million.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'd just like to speak on the bill just for a second.
On the bill, Senator, may proceed.
Thank you. I have three basic issues with this bill. The first is we're in the middle of a pandemic, and we keep seeing our constituents hurt in different means, and we keep seeing taxes come out on this floor this year. I understand taxes come all the time, but during a pandemic, it really concerns me. We just saw $250 million early in the session. Now we got another one where our county is coming in saying they want to raise more taxes, and that just gives me concern with that. And then the other portion of this bill, by design, this was put in without a cap to give politicians in my county unlimited taxing authority. So that concerns me as well. And then the last portion is, the intent of this is to get money from the rich and help the poor. But as we've seen with the commercial properties and during a pandemic, if you just look at the sale price, it's not a good indicator whether they're making money or not. They may actually be losing money, and this bill will hit them again, even though they've been hurt bad with the COVID. Now they're going to sell the property, even at a loss, and they're going to have to pay more taxes on it. So for those reasons, I'll be voting against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right. Any further discussion? Any further discussion?
Mr. President.
Yes, Chair recognizes sponsor of the bill.
Thank you. Colleagues, I wanted to speak to the bill for a moment. Here in Anne Arundel County, our housing prices have risen 10%, median housing price in the last year alone. And we know that because of the pandemic, we're seeing two diverging economies. We're seeing as the folks who had wealth before the pandemic, for the most part, are only becoming more wealthy. And we're seeing folks who were living paycheck to paycheck are now in the most dire of circumstances. We're seeing as 70% of the jobs lost in the last year are low and middle income jobs. What this bill does is it creates a housing trust fund. Of course it needs a funding mechanism, and that's what we're debating on the floor today, but it ensures that the people who work in Anne Arundel County might have an opportunity to live in Anne Arundel County, and Mr. President, that's why I'm voting green.
Thank you, Senator. Any further discussion on the bill? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 32 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 566, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 581, Senator Heddleman, action for change of name, waiver of publication requirement.
Senate Bill 581 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 34 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 581, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 613, Carroll County Senators, Carroll County Sheriff salary.
Senate Bill 613 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 613, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. We've got calendar number 28. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 632, Senator Kagan, election law, contested elections.
Senate Bill 632 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 632, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 669, Senator Wallstrike, a constitutional amendment, civil jury trials. This is a constitutional bill.
Senate Bill 669 is on third reader for final passage. Senators, this is a constitutional amendment. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 43 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 669, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 670, Senator Wallstrike, a court civil jury trials, amount in controversy.
Senate Bill 670 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 42 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 670, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 673, Senator Gallion, Department of Agriculture, Urban Agricultural Grant Program.
Senate Bill 673 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 673, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 689, Senator Signor, Office of Small Minority and Women Business Affairs, duties of the Special Secretary, Minority Business Enterprises.
Senate Bill 689 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 689, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 692, Senator Young, State Planning, Preservation of Agricultural Land, Goal.
Senate Bill 692 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 692, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 697, Senator Eckhart, State Procurement, Minority Business Enterprise Program, participation by gender or race.
Senate Bill 697 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 697, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 703, Senator West, Procurement, Minority Business Enterprises, Qualification and Certification.
Senate Bill 703 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 703, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 721, Senator Hester, Procurement, Small Business Reserve Program, Administration and Application.
Senate Bill 721 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 721, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 785, Senator Ferguson, State Board of Education membership and terms, capability and capacity study of education agencies. This is an emergency bill.
Senate Bill 785 is on third reader for final passage. Senators, this is an emergency bill. Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, So my challenge with this one, as we addressed it last week, was we provide details on who can be on the Board of Education. And I think that's a big mistake. From what I've heard in this body over the past several years about efforts to manage school districts across this state, to deal with all the many issues, that it's far more important that we have people who know how to get the water fountains working, take attendance, make sure the teachers are paid, and that sort of thing, rather than focus on a lot of the requirements that we're stating that boards of education members must have. Quite frankly, a good, strong business background would do much better for these folks, I believe, than all of these the social science expertise we're requiring of them. Those folks would certainly be available to our Board of Education members, but we really need people who can, from what we've heard over the number of years, testimony and bills in this committee, as well as in the media, what we could really use is a healthy dose of effective management. So I'll be voting red on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any further senators wish to offer their thoughts? Any further? Yes, Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to be voting green on this bill. You know, over the years, we have tried various different ways to bolster up the State Board of Education. And we've brought in really intelligent, successful business people to be on that board. And I wouldn't say that most of them have really been that successful, because I'm a true believer that somebody on that State Board of Education has to know education. You can be as smart as anything, and I mean, put a businessman or a businesswoman in a classroom that doesn't have teaching experience, and it's not a good thing. Same goes for the State Board. I just think that it has to be people that know education and understand it to be able to manage that board.
Thank you, Senator. Any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to explain their vote, change their vote? Chair, in explaining his vote, just a very quick note on this one that I think there's going to be a lot of work left to go here when it comes to the State Board. This is by no means a perfect bill, as there never is one. But one of the important components here is the study of the education agency. If you look at the MSD over time, its scope has grown from early childhood to special ed to students with severe disabilities to summer school, and now with the incoming of the blueprint, I think we are on a kind of new horizon as we emerge from this pandemic about how we effectively manage education in the state of Maryland. And so this, I hope, starts us down a path of really thinking critically about the bureaucracy side to make sure that it's as efficient and effective as possible, and look forward to the ongoing discussions about this important agency moving forward. With that, the clerk will take the call. With 45 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 785, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 823, Senator Gallion, Cecil County Board of Education, member terms and compensation.
Senate Bill 823 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 823, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 886, Senator Eldridge, Transfer with Success Act.
Senate Bill 886 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote?
Mr. President.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, Chair recognizes the senator from District 5.
Just to explain my vote, this is a really good bill and a really good idea to push forward. I was a community college graduate at Carroll Community College, and in 2002, which seems not that long ago, but it was a long time ago. And I remember I transferred to a four-year university, and I was fortunate that all but I think a couple of my classes transferred with no problem, and there was good reasons for why those classes didn't transfer. But we've had a situation as community colleges have gotten more and more sophisticated and offered more and more specialty offerings that our students are finding that certain times a university, a four-year university, may have something very similar, but they say, well, it's similar, but it's different, so you need to retake this advanced engineering course or computer science course, or the list can go on and on. So I'm really happy about this bill because I think this will help us to be sure that we do a better job of making sure that classes transfer, and also if for some reason it doesn't transfer, an explanation as to why so that we can make adjustments and changes. It's an important part of making college more affordable for all of our students, and that's something I think that everybody in this chamber has been concerned about, student loan debt, making college more affordable. So I applaud the sponsor and the bill, and I'm happy that it's going to pass, and hopefully we get it through and get it signed. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Any further senators wish to explain their vote? Yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from College Park.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I support the bill, too, and I think it's an important step in the right direction. But in line with the President's statement on reform of MSDE, this is a great first step, but it's a first step on a long journey. It's an issue that I worked on when I was on the Board of Regents a long time ago, and we've made progress. We've got much farther to go. One of the things we've learned during this COVID crisis year is because when we eliminate the limitations of time and space, students are able to study across boundaries. So, for example, the University of Maryland College Park is working with the other Big Ten schools so that students at each of those schools can take courses at other Big Ten schools. That's terrific. This goes to the community college integration with our four-year schools. We need to get it much tighter because if we want our students to have the widest array of choices, we want to be affordable, all these institutions have to integrate with each other and not just be in their own foxhole. So, good step in the right direction, but I think we've got a long way to go. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Any further senators wish to explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 886, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 911, Senator Smith, Unlawful Employment Practice, Statute of Limitations and Remedies.
Senate Bill 911 is on third reader for final passage. Not held by the senator from Gaithersburg and Rockville. Any discussion on the bill? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 911, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. All right, that was faster than expected. Let's go ahead to the second readers. We've got the Committee on Budget and Taxation. This is report number 12. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 1, the Speaker, Historically Black Colleges and Universities Funding, favorable with 3 amendments.
Chair recognizes the President Pro Tem as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, House Bill 1 is the cross-file to Senate Bill 1, which passed unanimously out of this chamber a month or so ago. The bill, as it was returned to the Senate, continues to provide funding contingent upon the settlement of the lawsuit related to HBCUs by June 1st, 2021. The bill, as it came to the House, came with amendments, and so the committee has the bill before you with 3 amendments. The first amendment makes technical changes to the title of the bill. Amendment number 2 adds a provision identical to the one that we adopted that says that if there is funding related to the cigarette restitution fund settlement, that those funds could be used to provide for funds to backfill to pay down on the settlement. Amendment number 3 alters a study requiring the Department of Legislative Services to contract with a consultant rather than MHEC conducting the study. And as y'all will recall, MHEC has some new responsibilities in the bill regarding studying and reporting on provisions related to program duplication and some other issues. So with that, Mr. President, I move the adoption of the 3 amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Question is on the amendments. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The 3 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 1 is hereby ordered passed for third reader. Clerk, let's go to finance now. We've got calendar number 15. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 9, Senator Kramer, State Employees, Collective Bargaining, Applicability, Bargaining Processes, and Memorandums of Understanding, favorable.
Senate Bill 9. Chair recognizes sponsor of the bill as the floor leader.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 9 requires the Chancellor of the University System of Maryland to act on behalf of all of the system's constituent institutions rather than the institution's presidents in all aspects of collective bargaining related to bringing in the Chancellor, an exclusive representative that represents more than one bargaining unit of the system, may request to bargain a consolidated collective bargaining agreement. The bill also provides that either the State Labor Relations Board or the Higher Education Labor Relations Board, rather than the Secretary of DBM or the state institutions, designates specified employees who are generally exempt from collective bargaining. The bill specifies that good faith requirements include facilitating the meaningful use of a fact finder and conforms references to USM personnel consistent with collective bargaining. There are no amendments. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Chair recognizes the senator from the 23rd District.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I could just ask a question of the esteemed floor leader.
Will the esteemed floor leader yield?
Yes, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
So, Senator may proceed.
So I represent Bowie State University, and I got a call and a text about the bill, and so I just wanted to ask you one question, give you a little background.
Please.
Dr. Breaux, the president, was concerned about two things. One was the uniqueness of their respective campuses when it comes to the exempt employees in the collective bargaining process. She's worried it would hurt her flexibility and possibly hurt her ability to attract candidates. This is her text, her words. Each university has its own exempt job titles, positions, and so a coordinator at University of Maryland College Park could be a coordinator different than a coordinator at Bowie State University. And so my question to you is, how will the uniqueness of the exempt jobs, not just for Bowie State, but for all of the campuses underneath the Chancellor, how will that roll up and how do you think they'll be protected?
So, colleagues, what the bill before you does is that currently in the university system, there are requirements that each of the institutions negotiate with the bargaining unit for the employees of each of the institutions. Across the 12 institutions of the system, there are currently 15 different contracts that get negotiated. And what the bill does is to consolidate the process with the Chancellor and the Board of Regents, because what happens now is that whatever terms are negotiated at the institution level, they then have to go all the way up the food chain to the Chancellor to either be approved or rejected. So what happens is you have the institutions working with the bargaining units, they reach an agreement, it goes all the way up the food chain, gets to the top, the food chain at the top says, nope, you can't do this, goes all the way back down, and the process starts over again. So what we have is an incredibly inefficient system where there is constantly, across the multiple institutions, bargaining going on, working its way up and down the food chain, and it just goes on and on. It's expensive, it's inefficient. So what the bill simply does, provides an opportunity for one contract across all of the institutions. And the contract is done at the top, where the decisions are made now, and it's just cut to the chase. Let's bargain for everybody across the board. This is what we do right now in state government. In state government, a far larger number of individuals and employees, the state negotiates one contract for every state agency. Right now, this inefficient system with the universities creates chaos. It also creates inequities where you have employees doing the exact same job in one school getting paid or having different benefits. They may be paid less, they may have fewer benefits than an employee doing the exact same job in a different institution in the system. So this is, let's utilize the same process we do in state government across all state agencies on a much smaller scale, but a thoughtful, practical scale for the university system. Now, the chancellor will have access to any input that the chancellor needs from individual institutions. The chancellor will have their own attorneys and bargaining team, and whomever the chancellor decides is part of that team will, in fact, participate. The bill also provides that if there is something unique about an individual institution, then that can be separated out and negotiated specifically for that institution, which actually, by the way, happens exceedingly infrequently now and has typically been over issues related to parking and parking fees at the institutions. So I hope that addresses your concern, good Senator, and answered your question.
All right, thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 30th District, followed by the 38th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the floor leader will yield for a question.
Certainly.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you, honorable floor leader. I have a question. The good senator from the 21st District and I served on the Board of Regents and then worked on a bill just 2 years ago to make the board more representative, more accountable, more transparent in its decisions. So I'm just curious, I'm supportive of the bill, but I'm curious of the decision to remove the power to classify employees from the Board of Regents to the State Higher Education Labor Relations Board. Could you just give me a little bit about why that change has been made in the bill?
Yes, there have been inconsistencies in the process. So the goal here was to establish, and generally speaking, through what you just discussed or the NLRB, there are definitions that are consistent and used nationally so that it clarifies and ensures there is no ambiguity, which has been an ongoing problem at this point. So it creates basically what is a national standard as to definitions and does not leave it up to arbitrary interpretation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Sure.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the Lower Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the bill sponsor take a couple questions, please?
Senator may proceed.
As you may know, I represent the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, and I did hear specifically from Dr. Heidi Anderson, who is the president of UMES. And she raised several points, but one point I was particularly concerned about is right before this bill came up for discussion, we just moved favorably HB1, historically black colleges and universities funding. And in the note that Dr. Anderson sent to me about SB 9, she outlined several negative impacts of the legislation on UMES operations. One point that she highlighted is that one of the negative impacts could be reduced funding to the University of Maryland Eastern Shore in this, because we would be supporting a centralized approach. And as you well know, usually as we move forward with legislation, the USM system will have to increase their expertise and labor, therefore having a negative impact on the individual operations such as UMES.
Would you like me to address that?
Yes, and then I have a couple other
no, actually, that's a misrepresentation. The fact of the matter is, and I'll refer you to the fiscal note, there is nothing in this legislation that should increase costs. Quite frankly, it will likely save a significant amount of money instead of having 15 different contracts being negotiated with 15 different teams of lawyers and negotiators representing the university system and 15 different, bargaining unit processes. It cuts to the chase and says one contract negotiated to save a lot of time, a lot of effort, and quite frankly, cost to the system.
Well,
so there should be no additional cost to...
I understand your point, but with the USM centralizing, it will require additional expertise that you would have to pay for. And I think Dr. Anderson's point would be, why would we focus on those, spending money on administrative functions rather than the funding that's needed for instruction and academic support? But I wanted to also...
again, I'll refer you to the fiscal note. The fiscal and policy note does not represent that as being a concern nor an issue. And once again, clearly, having one contract saves the costs of 15 contracts.
And then also specifically to UMES, again, this concern outlined by the president, Dr. Heidi Anderson, that UMES would lose the ability to relocate workers and hourly employers who will have reduced work times. So they're bringing very, specific impacts of this legislation on UMES operations, and I wanted to raise those in this debate about this bill.
Yeah, and I would say that's clearly not the situation. Quite frankly, whatever is negotiated now at the local level still has to go to the top to be approved. So now, instead of let's have each institution work through their negotiations, have it go all the way up, and then have the chancellor go through it, review it, and by the way, there's a host of things that then get fed right back down the chain to the institution. So the bottom line is, whatever implications there are now, the chancellor already makes the final decision on all those policies that are made at the local level. Now it'll cut to the chase, go right to the chancellor. Chancellor, does this work? Yes, fantastic.
I appreciate the sponsor's response.
Sure.
And I just want to note for my colleagues that I do not hear from Dr. Anderson on a daily basis. She normally only contacts me when there are causes of concern, and she has outlined specific impacts to UMES, and I wanted to bring those to your attention.
No, thank you, and I appreciate that. And quite just so you can rest comfortably, the system has been reaching out to institutions across the state, asking them to do what, raise questions like you did today. So, but the bottom line is, we're just simply consolidating the process and saving time, energy, and money, and providing a measure of equity across the board.
I understand that, but clearly there's a disconnect when you have a president of University of Maryland Eastern Shore outlining clear examples of the negative impact on UMES operations. So,
and once again, I would represent that those are not quite accurate.
All right, thank you. All right, we have a lot of questions on this bill, so we're going to go to the senator from from Prince George's County, followed by the senator from the 33rd District. Senator from Prince George's County.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'm a staunch supporter of collective bargaining. And I'm just not talking about wages, I'm talking about working conditions. I know this bill very well because it's before my committee. Mr. Sponsor of the bill, could you please stand up?
Will the floor leader yield for a question?
I would be happy to,
Senator may proceed.
So much. I have heard from a number of the presidents of these small colleges and universities, and particularly my alma mater, which is Bowie State. And my wonderful friend spoke about that. And what their fear is, I understand what you're doing, because ultimately it saves money. This bill saves money. Going up and down the chain, different attorneys negotiate. I understand this bill very well, but their heartburn is that they have felt that they're out of the loop. The presidents of the universities, of the small colleges, and because it's going to be up to the chancellor at the University of Maryland to ultimately make the decision, and I don't want to start with the University of Maryland College Park and the way that they treat their employees. I don't want, now that's another story for another day. But I'm concerned that the presidents of these small colleges and universities, and it didn't occur to me until I got these phone calls on yesterday, that they're concerned that they're being left out of the loop. I'm just trying to figure out how can this bill serve to keep those presidents in the loop.
No, and thank you. That's a good question. And again, the bottom line here is that the president and the chancellor have a direct line to one another. So what under this bill, the chancellor will be making the decisions as is done right now. But rather than have this process, this unnecessary process of a decision happens locally, it's got to work its way up to the chancellor. The chancellor then at some point reviews what's been negotiated down lower at the institution level. The chancellor says, no, I don't think I like this, send it back down, renegotiate these terms. Now it's simply, let's cut to the chase, go right to the individuals making the decisions at the top, and I guarantee you the chancellor will be making those decisions with the input of the presidents of the affected institutions. So they will still have a very interactive and viable opportunity to work with the chancellor. It just cuts out a lot of the in-between red tape that costs everybody money. It costs the institution money, it costs the bargaining units money, and it delays and defers the process for the employees.
Yeah, I understand that clearly, but I was just expressing the strong concerns of the presidents who called me, and more than one gave me a phone call.
Sure.
Okay,
thank you for the question.
Thank you, Senator. All right, we'll go to the senator from District 33, followed by the senator from District 26.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just like to speak against this bill.
On the report, Senator may proceed.
And when this discussion is over, we'll ask for a roll call vote at the appropriate time. Mr. President, this bill is not new to us. This bill has been before us and analyzed and talked about, and I'm telling you, I've got a son-in-law who's the smartest guy in the room. PhD from the University of Massachusetts. He's University of Virginia for 5 years as a researcher. And this past 12 months, he went through the process of changing schools. And he looked at dozens of schools. University of South Carolina, Alabama, Birmingham, Rutgers. He even went back, looked back at his old alma mater at University of Massachusetts, University of Delaware, and each one provided very specific guidelines on what they can do. Each campus controlled their budget, their availability, and things of that nature. And he selected the Rutgers University in New Jersey. And I have to tell you, they are a union campus. When he made the decision to go there, he understood he would make as much money as every other first-year associate professor. He is highly qualified. He brought a $3.5 million NIH grant. He publishes 12 to 15 publications a year. Any other institution would have paid him a lot more, but he recognized the other intrinsic values of that position. But it did restrict him, and it did cause him to pause, because he was resentful of the fact that he should be compensated at a higher level than some of his other first-year incoming professors. But he made that personal decision. It is my opinion that the union negotiation removes the power of college presidents from selecting and offering and heads of departments incentive packages to bring the best and the brightest to their campus. My information from members of the committee is there is not one college president in the UM system who thinks this is a good idea. I've been through it personally. I found if it goes union, sure, we'll be able to attract some, but will they be able to attract the best and the brightest? And that's, I think, the fundamental question that the presidents of these institutions are asking. Can they continue to have the ability to be flexible, to fill out their roster, to bring to their campus those educated, highly educated people who are very mobile, whether or not they can attract them to the campus? So I'm going to be voting against the bill, and I think there's some amendments coming from this side of the aisle, so at the appropriate time we'll ask for a special order first, and then when the appropriate time comes for a second reader vote to put it on the board. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the Senator from the 26th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Like many of my colleagues who've already spoken, I too received a number of calls from presidents throughout the state, and the main concern appears to be, Mr. Floor Leader, that they will not be able to be in the decision-making process in terms of deciding who comes on their campuses in terms of contracts and those kind of things. So I think you pretty well addressed that, but I just want to go on record of saying that I understand a portion of what you're attempting to do in this bill. I think we probably could do a few things to make it a little bit more palatable for those who rest with the decision on these campuses day in and day out. So I don't know if a special order is in place in order now, but at some appropriate time, I would like to address a special order, Mr. President.
The Senator has
yes.
moved to special order the bill. Let's go to the floor leader. Senator, do you think that we have a day? There are no amendments, so there's no layover if people want to take a look. But
well, it can be special order. There were no amendments, so we can't lay it over. But may I just quickly clarify, Mr. President, a couple of things that I think need to be addressed.
Senator, may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to quickly point out this bill has nothing to do with the professors at the universities. It has nothing to do with the scholastics at the universities. This job is about the staff at the universities, the housekeepers, the electricians, the mechanics who work on the equipment. It's about accountants and athletic trainers, IT personnel. So this does not affect at all how the campuses will handle their professors, how they will handle whatever it is they are teaching our students. This is about the staff. That's what this bill is about, and creating uniformity. And again, the chancellor is the one who makes the final decisions now. So when we've got the presidents calling up and saying, oh, we're not going to be involved, they will be involved with the chancellor. But the difference is, instead of this ridiculous process of negotiation, going to the chancellor, being kicked back down, the final decision will be with the person who's making the final decision now, the chancellor. So with that, thank you, Mr. President, and yes, I have no concerns about the bill being special order.
All right. Are there any objections to the Senator's motion to special order? If there are no objections, without objection, so ordered. The bill will be special ordered to the appropriate time tomorrow. Senators, please Certainly, we're still on the favorable committee report, so we'll have to move to adopt the report tomorrow. But please, if there are amendments being considered, please consider reaching out to the committee and the floor leader in the interim time to make sure that we have full knowledge for the body to vote on. All right, clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 35, Senator Feldman, procurement, prevailing wage applicability, favorable with 3 amendments.
Chair recognizes sponsor of the bill as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 35, as amended, requires that any public work contract valued at $250,000 or more that receives 25% or more in state funding shall pay the state prevailing wage to employees working on the project. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 alters the percentage of state funding as just described. Amendment number 3 specifies that the change is prospective. Mr. President, I'd move the amendment adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 3 committee amendments in the favorable committee report. Questions on the 3 amendments? Chair recognizes the minority whip.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. President. So it looks like the bill came in and it was any, and then you amended it to 25%?
Question for the floor leader?
Correct. So
Senator,
we actually,
go ahead.
by virtue of the amendment, less projects will be subject to prevailing wage than the bill as it was originally came in. Yeah, correct.
All right, I guess.
And could I just add, that puts it on par with what we currently do for schools. There's always been this confusion. We have one set of rules for public school projects and another set of rules for non-school projects. So all that amendment does was align it with what we currently require for school projects.
So this will be any project that gets 25% of its funding, whether it's municipal, whether it's nonprofit, anybody would have to be prevailing wage then?
Well, there's 2 parts of the test. You're just talking about the second prong. The first is the dollar threshold. Currently, it's $500,000 public work projects or greater. This bill brings it down to $250,000. The $500,000, so there's 2 parts. You first have to ask, is the size of the project above, under current law, $500,000, under the bill, $250,000. I would note the $500,000 threshold number is the highest threshold of any state in the entire United States of America. And even at the $250,000 number, we're still 3rd or 4th highest in the nation. Once you get to that, then you go to the second prong, which is what you're referring to, is the percentage of the project that involves state funds. Again, currently, it's 50%. This would take it down to 25%, which aligns it with what we currently do for school projects. So we've had this, again, misalignment between school projects and non-school projects. So there's two separate prongs that we're referring to.
Well, thank you very much. That explains. I get a quick question. I'm just thinking of this as far as, when we do bond bills, for example, a lot of these projects are, let's say it's $251,000, so that would put it over, right? Or $250, it has to be $250 over. And if you got a bond bill, it's 25% of that is $62,000. So if they got a $62,000 bond bill, they now have to take prevailing wage on that, if it's a goodwill or nonprofit or anything, right?
Well, one of the reasons we put the amendment to take it, the bill that was introduced was 50% state funds to 0. One of the reasons we bumped it back to 25%, I think, is to take out a lot of the bond bills. Most of the bond bills are smaller dollars and involve less state dollars. So I think with the amendments the committee put on it, it's going to have much, much less impact on some bond bills. But the smaller bond bills, the vast majority of the smaller bond bills are going to not be subject to the changes we're making in this bill, particularly with the amendment back to the 25%.
I mean, with all due respect, it seemed a lot of the bond bills I think we put in for my county seemed to be around that $100,000. And my concern was Mako's testimony that if you're adding, obviously there's a cost. I guess we could debate what the cost is. Mako states it's 10 to 20%. But it sort of seems like here we are getting money from the state to help these nonprofits, and on the other side, we're taking it out because we're demanding that you drive up the cost of labor. So we give with one hand, and it seems like we're taking back with the other. So I do have some concerns, so I'd ask that this bill lay over under the rule.
Senator's motion is in order. The bill and the amendments will be laid over under the rule. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 719, Senator Zucker, Maryland Department of Health, 211 Maryland Mental Health Services Phone Call Program, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 47th District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, on December 31st of 2020, Tommy Bloom Raskin, son of Sarah Bloom Raskin and Congressman Jamie Raskin, who suffered from depression, took his own life. The Raskins shared that on the last hellish, brutal day of that god-awful, miserable year of 2020, when hundreds of thousands of Americans and millions of people all over the world died alone in bed in the darkness from an invisible killer disease ravaging their bodies and minds, we also lost our dear, dear, beloved son, Hannah and Tabitha's beloved, irreplaceable brother, a radiant light in this broken world. He left us this farewell note on New Year's Eve day. Please forgive me my illness one today. Please look after each other, the animals, and the global poor for me. All my love, Tommy. The Raskins bravely shared this story publicly, and it touched the sponsor of this bill. He wanted to do something about it, and what he came up with was brilliant and will save lives. The sponsor thought of our award-winning senior call check program that proactively touches our seniors and our award-winning 211 system that supports Marylanders during a behavioral health crisis. He put the concepts together to contemplate an opt-in, outgoing behavioral health call program utilizing the expertise already within the 211, which this bill creates. Senate Bill 719 requires the Maryland Department of Health to make recommendations to 211 Maryland regarding the establishment of an opt-in mental health services phone call program that requires a call center to make periodic calls to persons who have opted into the program and attempts to connect persons with a mental health provider upon request. Amendment 1 adds sponsors and renames the bill as the Thomas Bloom Raskin Act. And colleagues, I just want you to know that the sponsor was in touch with the Raskins, and with their blessing and permission, we have this first amendment. Amendment number 2 authorizes the governor to include in the budget an amount sufficient to carry out the bill and change the effective date of the bill. There is no fiscal impact. There was no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, senators, if you have not yet had the opportunity to read the Raskin family's tribute to their son, that was, I think it was a Medium post. I mean, the pain, unimaginable, but the words that they were able to compose soon after his tragic passing was just, I mean, it was unbelievable, and would just strongly encourage folks to take a look at this, at the tribute that they put together. On the amendments, all in favor of the amendment? Yes, Chair recognizes the Chair.
After the amendments.
On the amendment?
On the amendment, just thank you, Mr.
Senator,
President.
proceed.
And I just want to say thank you to the committee and thank you to the sponsor of the bill. Thank you to the floor leader. Obviously, I succeeded the congressman in District 20 as a state senator, and over the years, I got to know Tommy fairly well. He was a brilliant, radiant, and compassionate young man, and I just really appreciate the work of the committee to recognize and to do this and take the step in consultation with the family, and our hearts go out to the family. I just wanted to say thank you to the committee for this amazing work.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendments, Chair recognizes the floor leader.
No, I have an amendment.
Oh, just give us just a moment, Senator. Thank you. On the amendments, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. The floor leader has an amendment. Senator, could you please, could the senator give us the number for the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. President. It's 719, and that's obviously the Senate bill number 953222/1.
All right, Senator, give us just one moment. All right, Senator may proceed to explain the amendment.
Yes, the amendment in consultation with the chair of judicial proceedings adds a sponsor to the bill.
Thank you, Senator. Any objections to the senator's amendment? The committee's amendment? Seeing none, without objection, the amendment is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 719 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 729, Senator Feldman, Maryland Health Benefit Exchange, State-Based Young Adult Health Insurance Subsidies Pilot Program, favorable with 3 amendments.
Chair recognizes the sponsor of the bill as the floor leader.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Let me just, before I describe the bill, I just want to say that, Maryland and this body, we've really been out front on health care and health insurance, and It's one of the reasons in terms of innovation, we've brought the individual insurance market premiums down for 3 straight years, and we've done it on a bipartisan basis. And I just want to say that this, I think, is a piece of legislation, this pilot program, that I think is in that same realm. So, Mr. President, Senate Bill 729 requires the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange to establish and implement a state-based young adult health insurance subsidies pilot program. The exchange, in consultation with the Maryland Insurance Commissioner and the Exchange Board, must establish subsidy eligibility and payment parameters for this pilot program for calendar years 2022 and 2023. In establishing the parameters, the exchange must consider young adults who are at least 18 years old and under the age of 41, between 18 and 41, and fall within a specified range of income. Amendment number 1 makes changes to the purpose paragraph. Amendment number 2 makes a correction in the bill so that it requires the exchange, when determining parameters for the pilot, to consider income groups between 133% and 400% of the federal poverty level. Amendment number 3 strikes the requirement that the governor designate funds from the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange Fund so that $10 million in annual subsidies can be provided under the pilot in each of fiscal years 2022 through 2024. Instead, under the amendment authorizes the exchange to designate up to $20 million in annual subsidies subject to available funds. Mr. President, there was no opposition at the committee hearing. The bill passed out of the committee unanimously, and with that, I'd move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Question on the amendments. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The 3 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 729 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reader. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 796, Senator Eckert, Maryland Office of Minority Health and Health Disparities and Maryland Health Care Commission reporting requirements, favorable.
796, Chair of the Finance. Do we have a... Chair recognizes the Chair of Finance.
Thank you. Senate Bill 796 expands the Health Care Disparities Policy Report Card published by the Office of Minority Health and Health Disparities to include racial and ethnic composition of the individuals who hold a license or certificate issued by a health occupation board. In addition, the report card must compare racial and ethnic variations in insurance coverage for low-income, non-elderly individuals and the racial and ethnic composition of individuals licensed or certified by a health occupations board with previously published report cards, including the same information. The bill also requires the office to submit a plan to the General Assembly on goals and implementing actions to eliminate minority health disparities. There are no amendments, no fiscal impact, no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right. The floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 796 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reader. All right, Senators, it's about 12:30 now. We're going to go we'll try to go until about 2 o'clock. We'll see how far we can get. We've got a lot of work here. So let's see as far as we can go, but just as you look at your calendars, we're going to go till probably 2. So if you have anything between 1 to 2, it is time to reschedule it. Let's go ahead and look at Education, Health, Environmental Affairs. This is calendar number 17. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 379, Senator Lamb, Health Occupations, Registration of Audiology Assistants, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the chair of the committee as the floor leader. I'm sorry, the sponsor of the bill is the floor leader.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 379 requires that an individual on or before October 1st, 2022 to be registered by the State Board of Audiologists, Hearing Aid Dispensers, and Speech and Language Pathologists as an audiology assistant before the individual may assist a licensed audiologist in the practice of audiology. An audiology assistant must assist the practice of audiology under the general supervision of a licensed audiologist, and unless registered by the board, an individual may not be represented to the public as specified that the person is authorized to practice audiology as an assistant in the state or assist in the practice of audiology. There are two committee amendments. The first amendment is technical and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 changes the term, quote, registration to licensing and requires the licensure of audiology assistants instead of registration. The amendment also adds hearing aid technician and cochlear implant technician to the list of terms a person is prohibited from using to indicate competence without being licensed. Move the two committee amendments in the favorable committee report.
Floor Leader moves to the adoption of the two committee amendments in the favorable committee report. Question on the two amendments. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 379 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 523, Senator Lamb, State Board of Examiners for Audiologists, Hearing Aid Dispensers, and Speech Language Pathologists duties, appointment of members, and requirements for licensees. Favorable with two amendments.
Chair recognizes the sponsor of the bill as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 523 alters provisions regarding the nomination of members to the State Board of Examiners for Audiologists, Hearing Aid Dispensers, and Speech and Language Pathologists. It also specifies how a licensee of the board must represent themselves to the public and notify the board of a change in contact information. It requires the board to maintain and make public an electronic list of licensees. It also includes the board in provisions relating to information about courses in cultural and linguistic competency. And lastly, it makes other technical and clarifying changes and takes effect on July 1st of this year. There are two committee amendments. The first one makes technical changes, and number 2 removes balloting procedures for board vacancies and restores the requirement for a licensee to display their license in their place of employment. Move the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor Leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments in the favorable committee report. Questions on the two amendments? Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The two committee amendments are adopted. The question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 523 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 661, Senator Patterson, Environment, Maryland Oil Disaster Containment, Cleanup and Contingency Fund, and Oil Containment Site Environmental Cleanup Fund, funding, reallocation, and reimbursements. Favorable with two amendments.
Chair recognizes the sponsor of the bill as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 661 extends the current 8-cent per barrel fee assessed on oil transferred into the state until July 1, 2014. As amended, the bill maintains a requirement that a portion of the fee be transferred to the Oil Contaminated Site Environmental Cleanup Fund, usually referred to as reimbursement fund. And finally, the bill authorized funds from the oil fund to be used for reimbursement for residential use. There are two amendments. One is technical. Amendment number 2 extend the current authorization for a portion of the 8 cent per barrel be transferred to the reimbursement fund July 1, 2024. And finally, the amendment requires the Maryland Department of Environment to study and report on the reimbursement fund and the state's effort to replace aging residential heating oil tanks. There was no opposition, no physical impact, and Mr. President, I move for the adoption of the two amendments and a favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Question on the amendments. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 661 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 684, Senator Lamb, Maryland Licensure of Certified Midwives Act, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the sponsor of the bill as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 684 establishes a licensing and regulatory system for a licensed certified midwife to practice certified midwifery under the State Board of Nursing. The Board of Nursing must, number 1, establish standards for this practice. Number 2, maintain a list of all licensed midwives. Number 3, set applicable fees. 4, initiate specified disciplinary action. The State Board of Nursing's Safe Practice Committee must also evaluate whether these midwives who request participation in the program and report to the board the name and the license number of any licensed certified midwife who is expelled from the program or fails to comply. On request of the board, the employer must report the name and license number of each employee licensed to the practice of certified midwifery. In essence, this creates another pathway for us to expand midwives and the number of midwives to be able to practice in the state. There are 2 committee amendments. The first one makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 grants board authority to require an applicant or licensee to submit an examination if there is evidence that the applicant or licensee may harm another individual in their practice, and also requires fees to be distributed to the Board of Nursing Fund and removes disciplinary consequences for practicing with an unrenewed license, as well as replacing it with engaging in unprofessional conduct or immoral conduct. It lastly adds licensure reinstatement procedures and adds provisions related to the scope of the board's authority. Move the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Question on the amendments? Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 684 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 701, Senator West, Bay Restoration Fund, County Authority to incur indebtedness, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senate Bill 701 is designed to help alleviate the backlog of septic replacement projects in the state of Maryland. When this program was established, money had been sent directly to the counties as a block grant for them to apply for the enhanced nutrient removal provisions of replacing septic systems. But over the years, the demand has been very great. So we actually, in many counties, have a backlog. They just don't have enough money from year to year. This bill is enabling legislation that will allow counties to borrow money in anticipation of future disbursements of the Bay Restoration Fund so that they can forward fund projects and clear out their waiting list. The faster we fix these failing septic systems, the better. It was a favorable report from the committee with 2 amendments. One was technical, and the second clarifies that the bill only applies to the local distribution or allocation of funds from the septic account, which is a different classification within that Bay Restoration Fund. Move the favorable report and the 2 amendments.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report on the amendments. The chair recognizes the senator from District 5.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wondered if the floor leader could yield for a question.
Will the floor leader yield?
Certainly.
Senator may proceed.
So I was looking over this bill. I think it's a good bill. It makes a lot of sense. It struck me there's no mention of municipalities, and I was curious, does the fund currently, is that because currently, and your explanation was very good, I'm just making sure, municipalities can't get the funding from this fund, correct?
That's my understanding.
So like I know in some of our counties, like from, Baltimore County doesn't have any municipalities, but Carroll has several. If a municipality, if someone's in a municipality, they would just work with their county. They'd be on a waiting list in the county, correct?
Sure. If I may use Anne Arundel County as an example,
Please.
The city of Annapolis, a municipality,
Heard of it, yes.
the people in that area can apply directly to Anne Arundel County for the benefit.
So the county oversees it, whether you live in a town or not. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, question on the amendments. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The two committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the favorable committee report is amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 701 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 744, Senator Eckert, State Board of Nursing, Certified Nursing Assistant Advisory Committee, membership and meetings, favorable.
Chair recognizes Vice Chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill simply updates the law regarding the function of our Certified Nursing Assistant Advisory Committee. Because these people work in shifts, a lot of times they're not available to show up for meetings, and so they have trouble reaching a quorum. So rather than 3 alternates, this would make 6 alternates and address issues like the quorum. There was no opposition, no amendments, and it passed unanimously. Move the favorable report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Questions on the report? Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 744 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 804, Senator Edwards, Garrett County Memorial Hospital Board membership and meetings, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from
35.
35, yes, back, as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill decreases from 15 to 9 the total number of members of the Garrett County Memorial Hospital Board of Governors. The bill also modifies the terms of office of at-large members and reduces the number of required annual board meetings. There were no committee amendments. Passed committee 11-0. I move for adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 804 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. All right, our last piece of unfinished business from our backup is this layover calendar number 12. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 75, Senator Heddleman, driver licensees, older licensees, in-person renewal. Question is on the adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right, Senators, the question is on the adoption of the 2 committee amendments. Chair recognizes Senator from Frederick. Nope. All right, question on the 2 committee amendments. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Chair recognizes Senator from Frederick, followed by the minority leader.
Yes, Mr. President. Thank you.
On the report, Senator? Speaking on the report?
Yes.
Senator may proceed.
First off, I would like to thank the sponsor for calling me and forwarding the information, which I think this was based on. I'm sure that this bill was offered with all the best intentions, but, very big but. I think it's discriminatory, and I think it reeks of intimidation. I read all the material. It's asking for first-person renewal requirements, providing an opportunity for the inspectors to approve or not approve a license based on obviously impaired conditions. I think that that's an awfully big judgment for a clerk to make, and I will have an amendment to deal with this if it goes forward. But still, on with the bill. It stated in the study, which was conducted in 2004, based on information from 1990 to 2000, which I think is pretty out of date. But it said, mainly due to increased risk of injury and medical complications, rather than an increased tendency to get into crashes. So that's saying that the seniors are not getting in more crashes, but they're much more likely to die from those crashes or have medical complications. So what I'm going to say here may sound like I'm joking a little, but I'm not. They are 85 years old or older. The chances of them dying is much higher than those under 85, though they have survived this long being healthy, but they are old. If you take away their driver's license because they might die in a crash, and again, it doesn't say that they're less safe drivers. If they're in a crash, they're more likely to die. So you take away their driver's license. So what do? Walk. Well, if you look at studies, older people at that age, if they fall down and break a hip, are much more likely to die. So I don't know if we next pass a bill telling them they can't walk because they're more likely to die. Now, if they can't drive and they can't walk, they sit at home. There are studies that show when you retire and sit at home and aren't actively involved, you die sooner. So they're either going to die in the car, die from their fall walking, or they're going to die from sitting home. Well, chances are sometime between 85 and 100, they're going to die. So we're making a judgment to take their license away from them because there's an increased chance that they'll die. As I read this study, it said that if they have to do in-face renewals of their license, which this bill is requiring, there's a good chance they'll get nervous and not go to renew it at all. So to me, it's a form of intimidation. We're making them go to renew because they might not go because they're scared and nervous. Again, we're trying to stop intimidation and suppression in voting. To me, this is intimidation and suppressing of people keeping an active life and going forward with the ability to drive. I think it's wrong. If we want to have standards for renewal, there are younger people that have medical problems. Let's look at everybody. Personally, I always go in and renew my license because it's less complicated to do that for me. But I don't want to put a requirement on there to try to scare people out of going in for their license. And I think that's what this bill does. And I would certainly recommend that we vote on favorable on it.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. And to the Senator from Frederick, I sure hear what you're saying, but let me tell you the other side of that coin. My late husband, probably in his late 70s, I would get phone calls from friends who had seen him driving up and down Montgomery Village Avenue in the middle of the road, getting too close to other cars, kind of gazing off and not paying attention. And so before it got to be too much of a disaster for us, I talked to the MVA, and they were so gracious about it. Sent him a letter and said, you're going to have to come in and have a psychological, had to pass a psychological test and pass a road test. And both of those tests had a price tag on them. So that when he saw that price tag, and he said to me then, should I do it? And I said, well, my guess is they're going to take your license anyway. That was at the point where he let me take him to the MVA to get his ID card. But he was getting to be a threat to other drivers on the road, and I couldn't let that happen. So that's the other side of that story.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Minority Leader.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
Sponsor the bill. Yes, sponsor the bill. My
Mr.
apologies.
President. Sorry.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd like to correct something, and I apologize to the body if I gave a misimpression the last time when I spoke about this. There is not a clerk at the MVA who's making any sort of assessment of an older adult that is coming in. What happens is we hope that, and the intention of this bill that stemmed from a tragedy in my district, is that people will, when they think about it, they will decide, they will self-select not to go in person. What happens when you go to the MVA is you do take a vision test, and if you fail your vision test, then you cannot renew. You can also, families and doctors can ask for there to be more intensive tests. But a clerk is not making this decision. When I spoke last week about someone walking in, it is the thought of them and their ability to park a car, walk into the MVA, go through the process at the MVA that might make some, and looking at their own potential physical and intellectual limitations that might cause someone to self-select not to opt, just as the majority leader stated. I'd also like to share some data because I want to, this is from the Maryland Department of Transportation, and they break down in their benchmark studies crashes and fatalities of those between the ages of 16 and 20. The gentleman from Frederick talked about, when we spoke on the phone, he wondered whether young people weren't more apt to have accidents or have fatalities than older people. And so I dug into this a little more. And in these benchmark studies, they compare injuries, crashes, and fatalities between the ages of 16 and 20, and then those between the ages of 65 and 110. And I'll tell you that crashes, and looking at 2017 through 2019, there are more crashes in the older groups at during each of those 3 years. For example, all the crashes in 2019 in the 16 to 20-year-olds, there were 13,682 crashes. In the older cohort, it was 15,795. What is most different, however, and it does go to the changes in our bodies, is the fatalities, which were more than double. And so I think what this bill is about, it is a non-coercive way of making people think twice if they have to go into the MVA. Are they perhaps up to continuing to be behind the wheel? This is about public safety. It's about public safety of the driver as well as the community at large. It is not coercive. The gentleman from Frederick mentioned to me that he has 97-year-old friends who drive. Well, if they go in and they pass the vision test, then they can renew their license and they can be on the road. There is nothing about this bill that is coercive. It just makes people think a little bit more, and it's about public safety for drivers as well as the community at large. Thank you.
All right, Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th District.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Can I ask the floor leader a question, please?
Floor leader, yield for a question?
Certainly.
Senator may proceed.
Yeah, just going specifically to the bill, it just requires that a individual go into the MVA office, correct?
Correct.
And then what happens once they're there?
Once they're there, they fill out the paperwork, they have a vision test. Like you or I, if we go into the MVA, the same thing.
So just a vision test?
Yes.
Is that correct? They just have to pass a vision test.
There's not are you asking me if there's a driving test or?
I'm asking you what happens when an individual over 85 goes into the MVA office.
The same thing that happens for any of us. We go in, we fill out the paperwork, we talk to a clerk, we pass a vision test, and
there's no analysis of this individual to see if they're capable of driving. There's just a simple vision test.
Correct.
Then why don't we say that in the bill, that an individual that is 85 would be required to pass a vision test?
Because that's the current practice.
Okay, so then what's changed?
We're making them come in rather than renew by mail.
That's what my point being, that if they have to go in, why don't we just say that they have to go in and pass a vision test?
We say that they have to go in. And they have to go in and do what we all do. The only thing that this bill is changing is it's removing the renewal by mail option. That's it. It's not changing anything else that they have to do at the MVA than they normally do.
We're just making them take a trip to get to the MVA, to walk in and do the same thing that they could do online.
Correct.
So there is no requirement for a vision test.
When you go to the MVA in person, you have to take a vision test when you're there. That is the current practice, and we're not changing that. That's the current practice when we all go into the when we all go in.
But I'm not an individual is not required to go in if they can navigate renewing their license online, right?
You do, when in the renewal, there is something to attest to you have to put something in your mail-in renewal about your vision in the form. When you go in, you're actually doing the test there. Both require you passing a vision test.
Well, one requires you attesting to it, the other requires you passing it.
Correct.
That's two different things. Okay, Mr. President, I'm not quite sure why we just don't write in the bill that a plus 85 has to pass a vision test rather than go in, at least make it that something has to happen. This kind of leads into thoughts that something else could happen, that there could be an analysis of somebody or a screening of somebody, or we don't know what could happen if this individual goes in and has to talk to somebody. Is that person capable of making or rendering a decision and saying that this person might not be capable of driving?
With a question or yield?
Yes.
So this is not about empowering a worker at the MVA to make any decision about the capacity of someone to drive. It is just about having the driver think twice about making the physical trip into the office. The requirements are not changed. So whatever.
It doesn't sound that way. It sounds like this is empowering somebody at MVA to make an analysis or a screening of somebody.
It is not. It is not. It does not say that in the bill. It does not.
I think the bill is poorly written.
Senator, is there a question for the floor leader or on the bill? All right, Chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd District.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Will the floor leader yield?
Sure.
So, Madam Floor Leader, it's been my experience when I took my 90-year-old father for his license renewal and my 84-year-old uncle, they took the vision test from their doctor, and it was on a form that you get from the motor vehicles, and that's accepted. So they were not taking their vision test at the MVA. And this bill does not say they have to take the vision test. It just says they must go in. So you're not changing the fact that they could have the vision test from their doctor and carry it in with them. Is that correct?
We're not changing that. That is absolutely right. You can still do that if you prefer.
Thank you, Madam.
All right. Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of Finance.
Yeah, just on the same line of questioning that the senator from the Upper Shore, just from a policy standpoint, because you cited some statistics, so I think that would seem to be the root for why we have the bill. So I'm still trying to get at, person goes in to renew in person. If they demonstrate any other issue that would, so right now under current law, there's no mechanism at the MVA for anybody to do anything if somebody walks in and exhibits some deficit beyond the vision issue, because that seems to be sort of, we're kind of sort of walking around the issue a little bit here, obsessed about vision. There are other things that would present a safety issue on the road, right? I mean, you would concede that point. So right now, under current law, if somebody walks in, other than vision, there's no mechanism to say this person doesn't know their own name, may be walking in with some other issue, to say that we cannot. I mean, I'm just trying to understand the current law beyond the vision issue, where this puts that person if they walk in and
That is my understanding. I will tell you there are evaluators who work at the MVA when a medical person, for example, has a concern. If one has a traumatic brain injury.
That's a little new information.
Senator, just if we could ask the question and get the answer.
I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
So to go to your point about someone who walks in, my understanding is that there are not people there who can make an assessment about somebody and who do not make an assessment about somebody's capacities at that moment. About
Well, okay, I appreciate it. So you just threw in this term evaluator that helps. So who is, I thought that there is no evaluation.
There is somebody called a certified driving rehabilitation specialist, and she testified on the bill as well. So she is somebody who works, for example, with doctors or physicians or families who somebody might have a medical limitation and not drive for a while, and she works with them to assess their abilities to drive again. If they assess whether they have been sufficiently recovered to be able to get back out on the road. And it happens that her clients are mostly 75 years of age and older.
Okay.
That is something separate from a regular renewal process.
Gotcha. Okay, Mr. President, that's actually very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the Minority Leader.
Thank you. If I just talk on the bill.
On the report, Senator may proceed.
Thank you. Anytime I hear us talking about taking privileges away from seniors, my ears perk up. I listen to that, and one of the things I'm hearing is basically there's good drivers and bad drivers. You can be 40 years old and a bad driver and 80 years old and be a great driver. I have personal experience of some of those that I can tell you about sometime. My concern with this bill is sort of along the line of Senator from Frederick, in that we are targeting older seniors strictly based on their age. If you look at the science and you look at the data, even the report that the sponsor talked about, it talks about people 65 and older. And if you look at the vision capability, it's typically 65 to 70 is when your vision starts deteriorating. And you can just let it go down, or you can get cataract surgery or other correction and help. All the science says, as far as vision and safety, what the MVA is checking is around 65 to 70, the state should start looking at it if they want to go down that policy. What we're doing is saying we're going to ignore the data, but just target an individual based on their age, not in line with the data. That gives me real pause when we're talking about seniors. Some of them are extremely sharp. Some of them shouldn't be on the road. They were sharp enough to elect you, so there are a lot of sharp people out there. Now, I started looking into this as far as the age. And the only thing the MVA basically does, despite what we heard at the first time when this was out on the floor, is they look at your vision. And can you pass the vision? So that is the standard. And the science clearly states around 65 or 70 is when you should have it checked more often. And then I started looking at what other states are doing. We're not alone here. Other states are starting to put these protections in for older drivers. And the average age in America that have these restrictions is not 85. It's 70. If we enacted this law, we would have the oldest age in America for MVA. So I say, where is the data that drove this bill out to the floor, no pun intended? And I don't see it. And also, I think what really needs to be in this discussion, we have an 8-year renewal. So if somebody gets a license at 85, it's not going to be till 93 before they come back again. What other states are doing is having an accelerated renewal for older people. They have to come back in 4 years. Or things like those are the things we should be looking at instead of just targeting somebody who's 85 years or older. I don't know if you recall, I can't remember the exact time, but we had somebody down here getting a citation. Very sharp person, in their 90s. They were still practicing law at the time, and they could have out-debated most of us. So you can't just discriminate against somebody because they're older. You have to look at the data, and the data does not support 85. And I'll just close on saying, on Equality and Human Rights Commission, while this is probably not constitutionally discriminatory, In practice, I believe it is. It says direct discrimination. This happens when someone treats you worse than another person in a similar situation because of your age. And that's exactly what this bill does. And I would ask for a second reader roll call, please.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from the 17th District.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I rise today in very strong support of this bill. I've considered sponsoring legislation about senior drivers for many years. It takes courage to do because some seniors are pretty vocal, and they do worry about some of the issues that the senator from District 3 raised. Independence, I understand. But bottom line is we want to keep our roadways safe. And the senator from District 31 talked about how other states are starting to do legislation. There are 31 other states, according to NCSL, and this is, I had a link to a chart in my files that is a few years outdated, so it could be even more than 31. Just to give you an idea, and the senator was correct when he talked about the ages in other states. Alaska, they start restricting driving after the age of 69. California, 70. Colorado, 66. Florida, 80. Georgia, 64. Idaho, 70. Illinois, 75. Indiana, 75. Iowa, 70. I can go on. Texas, 79. Virginia, 75. Many more. Drivers over the age of 65 are more than twice as likely to die in car crashes. And that's not even talking about people in other vehicles, in their vehicle or in other vehicles, or a pedestrian who may be injured or killed. 85, as the senator from District 31, the minority leader, mentioned, is by far the oldest, the least restrictive. Frankly, I would support it being a much younger age. I think we need to keep our roadways safe. I will just close with saying that those that are 65 and older are 16% more likely than those that are of the ages 25 to 65 to cause an accident. Not just to be in an accident, not just to have slower reflexes, but to cause an accident. I think this bill will start to keep our roadways a little bit safer by causing people, older drivers, as the senator from District 39 generously shared about her husband, needing to think this through, needing to reflect on the risks for themselves and their loved ones, as well as others in the community. I'll be proudly voting green and supporting this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from the 37th District.
Thank you very much. Would the floor leader yield for a question?
Will the floor leader yield?
Yes.
It
Thank you
appears
very
so.
much. Did the MBA weigh in on this at all? With the letter of information or anything?
They did not.
Interesting. But the reason I ask that question is because I'm pretty sure the Motor Vehicle Administration and MDOT has a pretty robust program of education and provision for how to deal with potential driving problems with an older age. Is that correct? Are you familiar with that?
I believe so. Mm-hmm.
And the reason I share that is that in my spare time I do Alzheimer's caregiver support groups, and we've worked with the MVA to bring those folks in to do a lot of education, and then from that we were able to educate other senior centers and churches and places in our district to be able to know what to do if in fact there are situations where people may take the keys and drive the car when maybe they're not able to do that. So I would just suggest that there already are programs out there, and I think unless and you can always call them if you have any concerns with folks, but I'm not sure having somebody go into the MBA to do something that they can do from home may be a way to address that issue. That's all I'm suggesting. Wouldn't you think?
Well, I don't agree, and that's why we introduced this bill. So I want to, if I could follow up and address one thing that you said. So this Journal of American Medical Association study that was done some time ago that the gentleman from Frederick mentioned, it said that the statistically significant finding from that report said that mandating in-person renewal were associated with a lower fatality rate for drivers age 85 and older. And so while I think what you're doing with the MVA and older adults is wonderful, and I commend you for that, and I think it's a terrific program. There's nothing coercive about this at all. It's only that you have to, if you want to renew, you have to go in. It's not saying you shouldn't renew. It's not putting any other limitations on someone other than they come in person. So thank you, though, for sharing that information and for sharing your experience.
Thank you. Thank you. I just know that where I live on the Eastern Shore, we have many people down the county and in Tillman Island and other places who would prefer not to drive into the MVA because I get more calls about that than a lot of other places. So thank you very much for your explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from District 5.
Just a quick question for the floor leader, because I was looking
Will
at
the
the
floor leader
bill.
yield?
Yes.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you. I was looking in the bill. So 86-year-old person, 87-year-old person goes in to renew their license, and is it it's the clerk that's basically making a judgment, correct?
No, that is not correct. I want to be really clear about this. No clerk is making a judgment. If you pass your vision test and you fill out your forms and you pay your fee, you get renewed.
Okay, so it's only that you have to go in.
Correct.
Okay, as I was going to ask, if you go in, what would be the circumstances where you could be declined? Would it be just failing a vision test?
Yes.
Okay. If someone fails a vision test now, is there an appeals process, or they just have to come back and do it in the future if they or try again, or?
I think you do have an opportunity to try again. I'm not sure about that. We can double check on that.
Someone standing up and speaking in this back and forth had an issue with their vision, trying to renew their license one time with an eye problem. It's not you, it's me. So I thought I remembered that you could come back after you dealt with the issue, but
I think that's right.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, are there any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? If not, yes, Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to be clear that AARP did not take a position against this. They submitted a letter of information.
All right. Any further senators who have not yet spoken wish to speak? If not, Chair recognizes the senator from Frederick City.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to correct a few things. Again, I'm reading from the study that was forwarded to me. In-person renewal requirements provide an opportunity for license inspectors to either refuse or grant licenses on obviously impaired drivers. Okay, they can do that right now. So anyone going in now or anyone going in if this bill passes, they can do that. Another thing, right from the article. The reason stated in the article said mainly due to increased risk of injury and medical complications rather than an increased tendency to get into crashes. So they're not basing this on a tendency to get into more crashes. It's based on supposedly protecting them. If you aren't in the car, you have less chance of getting hurt. So I guess the next stage would be to ban seniors from getting in cars because their danger is much more. And that's kind of what this bill would do. You know, it was brought up about people reaching an age. My brother and I noticed my mother was having a serious problem, and we sat her down and we took her license. The same thing happened to my brother with his family. I think in most cases, family notices when somebody's having a problem and they work at taking the license away. When I renewed my license last time, and I'm pretty sure I'm correct, I had the choice of going into motor vehicles, which I did, or doing it online. And if I did it online, I had to send a report in from my eye doctor that my vision was okay. If I get a chance, want to make an amendment, but I would rather have my doctor and my eye doctor decide whether I'm fit to drive than somebody at motor vehicles. If you read what that study said and what we're saying here, we're trying to intimidate people to think and not go get their license. That's why the crashes come down. Less of them are getting their license. A lot of old people get nervous and scared, and they stop doing things because they're afraid of them. And what this bill's doing, when you take everything else away, no problem with a physical, no problem with an eye test, somebody that's not capable of driving shouldn't be driving, but to intimidate them not to come in and get their license is the wrong thing to do. They can still do it online, and if all we're concerned about is the eye test, send in an eye test from your eye doctor. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from District 7. Not yet spoken.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I get up to speak against the favorable adoption of this bill. First of all, my family dealt with it with my grandfather. He was pulled over at 3 o'clock in the morning making an illegal U-turn. When the police officer asked him what he was doing, he said he was picking his son up from Little League Baseball. Cop knew right away there was a problem. And he called my father, they called my grandmother, she called my father, and they said, as a family decided, hey, it's time to take his license. And here's a guy, his entire life was in cars. Unfortunately, as he got older with dementia, he would actually go out and he knew how to start the cars, even when we tried to deal with them and move timing belts and distributor caps so they wouldn't start. So I understand the issue we deal with this, and again, my family went through it. But I look at everything we do in this legislature to make life easier for people. We're having online or mail-in voting, and it's always, let's make life easier, let's do it. This bill, I think we're discriminating against the elderly. And I say, if we have a problem with this and we're concerned, who knows best about them other than their doctor? Why not amend this bill to say, hey, if you're going to renew, get a note from your doctor. Make sure it's good. I have a CDL license. In order for me to renew my license, I have to have a physical every year. Why not do that? I think that would be better than having somebody go into the MVA and sit there. And we all know there's nothing worse than going to the MVA and sitting there for hours. If you remember that movie Beetlejuice, at the end, when he picks that number, that's what it feels like to sit there. And we're going to have these elderly people sit on those horrible metal benches for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, waiting for their number to be picked, just so they can go look into the screen to get their vision checked. So I don't support this bill in its current form, because when you read it, to me, and it appears it's not amended, it says this subsection, the administration may not renew the license of an individual of at least 85 years old without requiring the individual to appear in person at the office of the administration. That could be when you go there, you have to check in. Hey, I appeared, I checked in, I got my name read, I can leave and go do it online. So I think this is very vague in what it's requiring, as my colleague to my left said. So again, I understand the issue. I appreciate it. I went through it with my family. But I think this is the wrong way to do it. And, I would push for an amendment to put it to the doctors. Because, again, they know the best how to take care of their patients and their cognitive ability and their vision and all of that. So with that, Mr. President, I'll sit down and ask that we do not support this favorable committee report.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from District 36, followed by the senator from District 17.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Just a couple comments. I agree with the last two speakers. Unfortunately, this bill is poorly written to the fact that it is not prescriptive. It doesn't say what is necessary other than somebody walking through the doors. If we want to judge somebody's driving abilities based on their eyesight, then simply say in the bill that a 85 or older must go to MVA to pass an eye test. I mean, that's much simpler. But again, there's been citing of intimidating older drivers, and I think absolutely that's just what this bill is, because that's all we've said is that they have to show up. It is a form of intimidation. And Mr. President, I think this conversation would be going very differently if we were requiring those that are 85 or older must show up at an election poll rather than mailing in a ballot. So with that, Mr. President, I would vote that we move unfavorable on this.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from District 17.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the sponsor of the bill yield?
Will the sponsor yield?
Certainly.
Senator may proceed.
What was the vote in the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee, please?
The vote was 11-0.
11-0. So that means every Democrat and every Republican on the committee supported this bill?
Senator, I think we know what it means.
Sorry, I'm just clarifying. Okay, thank you, Senator.
All right, question is on the favorable committee report. Chair recognizes Minority Whip.
Yeah, I just want to address the vote. To be honest, sometimes that's why the committee of the whole, the floor, is very interesting. And to be honest, this was a fascinating debate. It was probably 100 times longer than we had in committee, and it was enlightening to hear people's perspective. And so I voted for it, but I got to say my colleague from Frederick, I was very much moved by his comments, and so I actually am going to be voting against it. So thank you.
All right. Question, I think there was a request for a roll call vote. Question is on the adoption of the favorable report as amended. Any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 28 votes in the negative, the favorable report is rejected. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 494, Senator West, Juveniles Convicted as Adults, Sentencing Limitations and Reduction, Juvenile Restoration Act. Question is on the adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable report.
Question is on the two committee amendments. Chair recognizes the Minority Whip.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd like to speak on the committee report, if I may.
Senator, do we want to do the amendments first?
No, I prefer to speak on the report.
But before us are the two committee amendments.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead and adopt the amendments, then I'll speak on the report. I'm
Any
sorry,
discussion on the two committee amendments? If there's no further discussion on the amendments, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Chair recognizes the Minority Whip.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Just a reminder for the body, because I know it was a couple days ago, what this bill actually does. The bill before us would eliminate life without parole for juveniles. And it would allow those who are currently imprisoned under life without parole after 20 years to come back forward for resentencing to a judge. Now, so you know that those who are charged under or sentenced under life without parole in our system, those are first-degree murder. So that's premeditated murder. And you'll hear about all the states that are changing their laws and all the red states that have adopted this. Well, there's a big difference between them and the state of Maryland in that the state of Maryland was not forced by the Supreme Court. We never made it a mandatory sentence, life without parole for first-degree murder. We left the discretion at the judge's hands. This bill would remove that discretion and say they can no longer do it. You'll also hear that these are children. These are young people, that they didn't know what they were doing. Well, in our system, they were charged as adults. They were convicted as adults, and their crimes are some of the most heinous in our state. One of the most famous people that this will affect is Lee Malvo, the D.C. sniper, who in the state of Virginia, because of Supreme Court decisions, his sentences, many of which are going to be vacated or redone, and he's going to pop right back over to Maryland and now get a resentencing hearing under this legislation. And furthermore, this legislation, instead of going to a parole board, would have them go back to a judge. So one single judge can decide to let someone who committed some of the most heinous acts imaginable in Maryland to walk out rather than using the parole board. And just so we understand what we're talking about, the state's attorney of Baltimore County, and these are very rarely used. This is about a dozen. This is the worst of the worst that we use life without parole for juvenile offenders. These would be, and why we have it, in cases of school shootings, the most heinous things you can imagine, we'd want to have this here as an option, which we'll lose if we pass this. But the state's attorney from Baltimore County gave me 2 cases, which I want to read off. The first one, Benjamin Garris, currently 35, convicted of first-degree murder. It says premeditated. He committed his crime at the age of 16. On October 8, 1995, the Baltimore County Police Department was called to Shepherd Pratt Hospital for a suspicious condition. At a small cottage on the hospital property, they found a small fire that had been ignited with liquid accelerant. Throughout the cottage, they found liquid chemicals that led to a propane tank on the second floor, whose valve had been opened with gas leaking out. Found in the cottage was the body of Sharon Edwards, age 28, the mother of a 7-year-old who was working her first overnight shift. Miss Edwards was a care provider at the cottage, which provided residency to 5 male juveniles. Miss Edwards was slashed and stabbed 26 times by Garris. At the time of the incident, it was home to 3 juvenile males. When the police arrived, 2 of the juveniles were present, and Benjamin Garris had fled. Found in Garris's room were documentation about setting fires and documents on how to kill people. Thankfully, the fire had not consumed the building, which would have taken 2 more lives. Garris confessed to the murder, telling the police that when Miss Edwards pled for her life, when she begged for her life, he responded, "You're dead. That's right, you're nothing but a piece of meat." Another one, Andre Lawson, 31, convicted of first-degree murder at the age of 17. On December 24, 2000, police were called to a Burger King where a large amount of blood, coins, and a cash register were found in the office area. They found the body of James Staubach, age 21, outside the near trash dumpsters, dead. Mr. Staubach was the night manager of the Burger King. He was bound with duct tape, stabbed and beaten repeatedly during an after-hours robbery that Lawson committed with 3 others. And this is from the state's attorney. He was beaten so badly that the duct tape that was put on his face was found in an autopsy in his brain. Lawson was caught days after the murder, found in his room where the victim's clothes covered in blood. During the pre-sentencing interview, he told the agents he was cold, had no regard for others. So that's who we're talking about here. So I think it was very important, as we discussed some of the amendments others have, that we start hearing language of kids just making mistakes, brains formation, all these things. I think it's very important in the body to know that if we pass this bill as is, these heinous acts and others that commit them, the sentence of life without parole will no longer be available, and these individuals will now go in front of one judge to decide if they should walk or not. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. So when I first became chairman of the Judicial Proceedings Committee, the first thing I did was to schedule a briefing with the Justice Policy Institute because they had just released a report that outlined kind of the disparities and the inequities in our criminal justice system here in Maryland. And that report highlighted several things. More than 70% of our state's population is black, when our black population is just 30%. 87% of the people that would be eligible for a sentence review, not release, but just review, are black. Now, we have the highest percentage of imprisoned African Americans than any other state in the nation. And this bill provides us an opportunity to march toward a more equitable and just criminal justice system. To be clear, this bill only provides an opportunity for a hearing after 20 years. It's not a guarantee of release, just a review. And the fundamental question is, look, what the senator referenced, all the heinous crimes that you heard, you've got to look this problem right in the eye. What he said is true. So the fundamental question about this bill is, do you believe in the redemptive quality of the human condition? And I want to read a couple of quotes from some folks that I've come to respect a lot over the course of the last couple of years working on this issue. One is from a gentleman, Eddie Ellis. He works for the Campaign for Fair Sentencing of Youth, and I've actually become very good friends with him over the course of the last few years. He said, when I was 16 years old, I was called a menace to society, and I was told that I would never get out of prison. But I received a second chance, and now I provide support to formerly incarcerated children all over the country. My life is testimony that no child is beyond the hope of redemption. I want to give you another quote from the mother of a youth. Her son was killed by another youth. I saw those boys in court. When I saw them, I thought I was going to see men. They were babies, and I knew then that I had to keep looking deeper, so I did, and that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here supporting legislative reform, ensuring that no child is sentenced to die in prison. So very simply put, what this bill would do is those that are 14, 15, 16, 17, who have, yes, committed heinous crimes, after we pass this bill, will have an opportunity to demonstrate their redemptive qualities. And they'll have an opportunity to go before a judge and have that judge then make the decision if that person is ready to come back and if it's in the best interest of our society as a whole. And so, Mr. President, with that, I look forward to the debate. We'll get into the mechanics of the bill and the merits, but I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from District 10.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I am one of those that believes that science ought to inform our policies. And one of the things that science has done was to inform the U.S. Supreme Court about the lack of the lack of readiness to act in many cases in ways that are humane, that are thoughtful on the part of kids. I don't remember all the citations, but I went to conferences some years ago sponsored by the National Conference on State Legislatures, where I became aware of several Supreme Court rulings that speak to this issue. Miller v. Alabama and Graham v. Florida were just two of the cases that come to mind at the moment. The science shows that the brain of young people in their adolescence and pre-adolescent states are not neurologically functioning the way the brain of an adult can. But in addition to that, one thing that I did just yesterday was to write a letter to the chairman of the Parole Commission about a person who today is 53 years old, but I knew him when he was a child. When he was a child, and before he became a victim of a particular crime that was heinous, he was precocious. He had a family that was loving. But when one day an intruder broke into the house, shot their dog, raped his mother with his father tied up, this little boy that I knew, used to play with my kids, became kind of a monster for some years. He was full of rage, and he did not have the ability of the typical adult or a brain that was more fully formed to manage to live in a productive manner given what had happened to his family. It occurred to me, and I said it to the chairman of the Parole Commission in my letter yesterday, because he was given parole for something that he later did 10 years ago, and the governor intervened, and so he didn't get parole, and now he's up again. And it occurs to me that we must consider the science, first of all, and we must secondly consider that many people who commit very heinous crimes were never loved or nurtured, were not given in early childhood or in their adolescent stages the blessings that many of us were able to enjoy. Now, the young man for whom I wrote the letter yesterday had loving parents, but it didn't stop him from reacting almost like an animal to having been made the victim of a crime. And they couldn't do a thing with him for years until he got into trouble because of what he had witnessed. He was a victim of a crime. Many people who are born in underprivileged circumstances never feel love, never have consistency in their lives. I have worried a lot about many of the kids of the essential workers during this pandemic. If the parents are loving but poor and they had to go to work, the schools closed down, and the child is expected to learn virtually when they don't own a computer or they don't live in a block where there's 5G or broadband. If there is nobody to take care of the toddler but the 9-year-old who isn't being taught, if the rest of us are starting to feel depressed, imagine the entire life as a young child and an adolescent of many people who end up behind bars for life in Maryland or elsewhere. I hope you get my point, but we are not all born equal. Before God, I believe we are. But in human society, many of us have blessings that we don't even yet appreciate because we're so used to them. And many other people have never known the blessings that some of us have had. I would say that the Supreme Court was right in at least 4 different cases on which they have opined regarding why no juvenile should be given a life sentence. But I'm remembering that Miller v. Alabama and Graham v. Florida were at least 2 of them. I'm with the Supreme Court. I'm with science. I'm with the need for the rest of us to be less judgmental and more helpful. Let's see what we can do to save some of the kids who are in trouble before they're in trouble, rather than to come down with a verdict that's for life. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from the 34th District.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Oh, Senator, 34th District, followed by the Senator from Baltimore City.
Sorry. I thought I heard my number.
I'm sorry. We are almost 34. Is it? I can't see you, so I can't.
Yes,
see
Senator.
you.
Sorry,
Okay.
apologies. Yes,
All right,
34.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this is a tough bill because it confuses 2 groups of people. It addresses both life without parole and then also the whole next group down, like lifers and such. And so the arguments tend to get convoluted, but they really don't match. You can't crosswalk them. For example, the chairman refers to racial disparities. That doesn't apply to life without parole. If you look at life without parolers, of which there's only about 17 in the system for juvenile people sentenced for crimes committed by juveniles, it's a really small group of people, and the racial disparity isn't an issue. And neither are the issues, quite frankly, that are addressed by the chairman of finance. I'm sorry, VE, finance. I'm getting you guys mixed up over there. Sorry about that. Because these are not kids who just didn't have someone to love them. You know, I've served at wartime with kids who had no one to love them. Brave 18-year-olds from really bad backgrounds who had no one to love them. And I mean, kids who actually, they would go home and leave from war and come back early because there was nobody to see, quite frankly. They wanted to come back and be with their fellow soldiers. Pretty sad group. But they had no confusion in their life that they couldn't commit brutal murders. Were they high risk takers? Yeah, they really were. Did they live on the edge? Yes, they often did. But there was no confusion about can I rape someone and slit her throat and burn her body. That was just not in the I'm kind of confused in life. My brain's not fully formed. So where are we? I mean, the gentleman from Frederick gave you some examples of a couple of examples of where we are on the life without parole. And I think you have to consider, do we want to make a distinction between life and life without parole? Are there those crimes that are just so heinous that we want to say, wait a second, this is not in the ordinary role. This is not in the ordinary run. The person, the typical lifer is somebody who just shot somebody in a simple robbery. Not a good thing, but we have much worse crimes. It's the person who gets jealous, the person who just gets jealous in a love event or something and shoots somebody. Those are more your typical first-degree murders. These are not those, and these are those despicable crimes. And I ask you, if you have somebody who says engages in a mass murder, are we just going to give them just life? We're not going to distinguish. So let me give you some more examples that the minority whip didn't give you. Aaron Holly, he was convicted of first-degree murder at age of 17. The police, he fought in response to shots fired. The police found the victim, Tanya Jones, age 30, the mother of 2 young children, lying on the ground under a second-floor balcony. She'd been shot 2 times in the head. Witnesses revealed that Mrs. Jones had just arrived home from work and can be heard on a third-floor balcony yelling, "No, no, no." She jumped 20 feet to the ground and was crawling away when Aaron Holly shot her point blank in the head. We've already talked about John Lee Malvo. We've also got, from Dorchester County, Otha Wongus. He was convicted. He encountered Yvonne Fontaine, 33. She was a mother of 2 who was employed as a waitress, and they had a grudge with her. They forced her down the alley and proceeded to rape her repeatedly. Then they decided they had to kill her so she couldn't report the rape. So they strangled her until she passed out. Having no weapons with them, they began beating her and stomping her with their boots. When she regained consciousness, he tried to finish her off by breaking her neck, twisting her head back and forth until a breaking sound was heard. But she was still alive. So then he started stomping her face. He later returned with a rifle, which they used to stab her in the chest to make sure she was dead. Then they wrapped her body and poured bleach on it in plastic. Then we have Alexander Watson. He was found guilty of 3 murders that were all solved in 2004. The murders occurred in 86 and 93 and 94. The victims were ages 37, 34, and 14. They were all women. The one had been out jogging, and her body was found in a field. She'd been sexually assaulted. The next was another young woman who was murdered during a robbery. And then the third was a 14-year-old girl who went missing from school, and her body was found the next day strangled and stabbed. And then we have a fellow, Harold Waterbury. He was found guilty in 2003 of the stomping death of Gerald Holly, who was a homeless man, and he had been charged with several other stomping deaths of homeless people. So these are the kind of crimes we're talking about. And again, you can't just fall victim to hey, these are racial disparities. It doesn't apply to life without parolers, because that level of evil, that level of pure evil, isn't really inspired by I was poor. It's not really inspired by my parents didn't have much time to give me. I was raised by a single person. They weren't able to care for me. I had nothing growing up. No, these are crimes committed by people who are evil, and as we would all expect, pure evil doesn't belong to any particular racial or demographic or any other group. It's just pure evil. And so to remove this possibility of an imposition of life without parole, I think would be a real dereliction of our duty as lawmakers to make sure that the public is protected and that these heinous crimes receive adequate punishment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the body, what I'd like you to know about this bill is that Senator, the chair of finance, brought up the Supreme Court decisions, but all the way back to 2012, Supreme Court said that children cannot be sentenced to life without the possibility of parole unless the extreme circumstance where there's a finding that that child is incapable of rehabilitation. And after that, many states began to stop sentencing children to life without parole, but not Maryland. And that was in 2012. Right now, 24 states plus the District of Columbia don't allow sentences for life without parole, and most of them have followed the later ruling of Montgomery versus Louisiana in 2016 that said that this has to be retroactive, that children that have been sentenced in such a way, the court has to go back and take a look and resentence where necessary. And the reason that they said that, the reason the Supreme Court said that is no matter what the crime, the actual child, the science tells us that children's brains are not fully formed, and it's highly unlikely to find that they are incapable of rehabilitation. Maryland was rated among the absolute worst states in terms of the human rights of children because of the reason that we did not follow the findings of the Supreme Court in 2010, 2012, 2016, and the like. We are among the last states that is taking a look at this issue, that's going back and saying we need to reimagine, redo the way that we allow children to be sentenced. Now, some of my colleagues, citing some of the most horrible, heinous things, what they would have you believe that this bill would allow people to get out of jail, get out of prison, upon having committed the most awful of crimes. What this bill actually does is three things. It says, hey, children cannot be sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, things that the Supreme Court said in 2012. No, it still doesn't say ever. It says, unless there's a finding that the child is incapable of rehabilitation. So that's still something that's on the table. The second thing the bill does is it allows courts to individualize sentencing, to make it proportionate to the crime and to the individual. And then the third thing it does is say that after at least 20 years have been served, the court can take a look and have a review and revise the sentence if it deems it necessary. And they're going to look at things like what has happened since that time. If this person was 15 years old, have they gotten their degrees? Have they done everything right? Do they have a perfect record? Have they been rehabilitated? And in those instances, you're going to find situations like Christopher Wilson. You're going to find, because this body created a law some years ago that stopped allowing judges to modify sentences beyond a 5-year period, you don't have options outside of this for people like Christopher Wilson, who testified before our committee and our body a long time ago, that went to prison at, I believe, 15 years old for murder because he was, in essence, defending his mother against an abusive partner. And a judge later looked at the fact that he had gone to school, he had gotten his AA degree, his BA degree, his master's degree. He had taken advantage of every program that they had to offer. And since he has been released, he's one of the rare people that got released because of that modification that we used to allow. He's done more in his life than I would say the majority of us would do if we lived to be 90 years old. He started neighborhood programs, community programs, programs to help people that have been formerly incarcerated. He's become a major artist and an entrepreneur. And so when you have one tragedy, we don't want to compound the tragedy by sentencing children to die in prison. To die in prison is not going to bring back or correct the earlier tragedy. And so I would urge the body to, one, have Maryland join the majority of states that have actually followed the lessons of the Supreme Court and the rulings of the Supreme Court. But also, let's move from last to maybe, if not first, to being among the top states to actually recognize, as the senator said, what science tells us, that brains are not fully developed until children are at least the age of 25 years old. We're not even asking for that. We're simply asking to have a judge use discretion. We're giving judges discretion, greater discretion in how they sentence children. And so for those reasons, I would urge us to support this bill. We're actually late. We're among the last to do so, to recognize this, the humanity of all children, all people. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, question before the body is on the favorable report as amended. Are there any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? If not, Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, it's important when you look at this again to recognize, because you're listening to the arguments that, well, for the most heinous, they would still have the ability to keep people in jail as life without parole, but you wouldn't under this bill. No matter how heinous the crime, no matter how disgusting and heinous, that would be gone. So that's not there any longer under this bill. There's two parts to the bill. The other part has to do with review. And quite frankly, as to that part, it's no longer relevant. It's no longer relevant. All this bill was really good, and I'm going to explain why. All this bill really does is kill life without parole. It says you can't do that no matter how horribly and disgusting the crime was, it's gone. As to the other part that we've been discussing here, to provide for sentence reviews, colleagues, the court has already moved on. They just approved yesterday a rule change that allows for exactly what we're saying here, which is that there would be sentence reviews by the court, not by the parole commission, for these juvenile offenders, and even for other offenders. So that issue, quite frankly, no matter what we do here, isn't there. So what we will really change by moving forward this bill, the only thing we're really going to change, or really going to impact, the only thing we're really going to impact is removing life without parole for horribly disgusting crimes that merit that punishment. Thank you.
All right, question is on the adoption of the favorable report as amended. Any further discussion? Not. All in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Suspect that there are a number of there are amendments. Look, we are at 154, so I think we can probably call it for today. We've got a lot left. So let's just quickly talk calendar for a second. So right now we have planned 10:30 tomorrow, 10:30 Thursday, 12 o'clock on Friday. The House has announced that they're going to be in on Saturday. If we can avoid Saturday, that would be ideal, but we're going to have to see how far we get. So if we get stuck, we'll be here on Saturday. We have on the calendar a 7 p.m. on Monday. It's looking more and more likely that there's probably going to have to be a noon on Monday as well. We'll probably have to do 2 on Monday. But the moment we kind of get a sense, I know committees are going to be working hard voting some more bills this week, so I think the desk is going to be very, very, very full as it is currently. So we'll see where we can get. Tomorrow will be a good indicator, and we'll kind of make some decisions probably after tomorrow once we see how far we can go. All right, let's do committee announcements. Chair recognizes the Chair of Finance.
Finance will meet at 2:45 for bill hearings, and a half hour after the bill hearings, we will be voting.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the Chair of Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs.
Mr. President, Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs will also meet at 2:45. We have 9 bills, some Senate bills, some House bills, and then we have a very long voting list, about 25 bills.
All right. Chair recognizes the Chair of Budget and Tax.
Thank you, Mr. President. Voting session at 2:30.
2:30 voting. All right. Chair of Judicial Proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Judicial Proceedings Committee will reconvene at 2:45 for a 1 bill hearing followed by a voting session.
Great. Thank you, Senator. Other committees. Yes, Chair recognizes the Baltimore County Senator from District 8.
The Women's Commission for the
Senator, may proceed.
19th Amendment. I'm just all the women in the Senate, please meet back in the lounge very quickly to return your sashes. Plus, we want to get one more photo. So, are all the women paying attention? Please do.
We believe so. Hopefully.
Thank you.
All right. Other announcements. Chair recognizes the Chair of the Protocol Committee.
Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, we say hello to our group of pages this week. They're returning for a second week. They'll be participating with us virtually. And if you haven't already had an opportunity to contact someone from your area, please do. They would welcome that opportunity. We want to thank everybody who's worked with them this session. And Mr. President, we just want to bid them well, and we'll say goodbye to them at the end of the week on Friday. So thank you, students, for being with us. Your communities have sent us the brightest and the best.
Thank you so much, Senator. And actually, just a quick point as thinking about the pages listening in. I almost interjected a bit after kind of a relaying of a number of the most horrific instances. Certainly, there is a level of relevance, but remember, this is a really important place that people are listening, and we've got high school seniors who are listening in, and just want to think as we move forward, we're going to have, I suspect, continued debate on tough issues like this. To the degree that senators can exercise their own discretion about the level of which their words describe situations. I think we all know the issue at hand, and so just please keep it in mind. We got a lot of people watching, and just think about the impact. All right, busy day today. Anything else before we get out of here? Let's do a quorum call before we.
Mr. President.
Oh, yes, Chair recognizes the senator from 33rd District.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We lost a icon in Anne Arundel County this past weekend. Robert Paschal passed away. Robert Paschal served on this floor as a member of the Maryland State Senate from 1971 to 1974, after which he moved to be 8 years as the Anne Arundel County executive. He was an outstanding businessman, but more importantly, he returned with philanthropy to the places he loved. He dedicated a significant amount of money to Duke University to put together an indoor football stadium complex where he played as a running back before he went to the Canadian Football League. In Anne Arundel County, we have a Paschal Senior Center. He dedicated money for mental health issues. In Severna Park, there was a Paschal Family Counseling. And even today, at the Crownsville State Hospital, there's the Crownsville Drug and Alcohol Rehabilitation Center named in his honor. 89 years old, lived a good, faithful life. We're going to miss him. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you so much for bringing that to our attention. I slipped my mind. Thank you for that, and we will certainly adjourn in the former senator's honor. All right, quorum call before we adjourn.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 47 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I didn't get the exact pronouncement of the person.
Paschal, I believe. Paschal.
Oh, Paschal. Okay, thank you. Okay, I move the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until Wednesday, March 17th at 10:30 a.m. in memory of Mr. Paschal.
Without objection, so ordered. Stay